Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1982 animated film, The Secret of Nimh. Now, before I get around to sharing my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Jonathan for not only requesting this review, but for also sending me the film on Blu-ray. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you'd like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both will be in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your review as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Secret of Nimh is a film that is widely considered by many fans of animation to be one of the finest examples of a animated film for children or for families that has ever been released. And on one hand, I can definitely see why that's the case. I can agree with that when it comes to the technical merits of the film, when it comes to the quality of the animation, not necessarily when it comes to the quality of the story or the script overall, but I still would say this is one of the better animated films from the 1980s. And a lot of critics at the time when this film came out felt the same way. Some critics were lukewarm on it, or they weren't as really that enthusiastic about the film compared to others. But for the most part, it got a lot of positive accolades. Didn't really result in a significant box office though for the film. For a movie that cost like 6 to 7 million, it only wound up making 14. So it barely broke even when it comes to its box office returns, which was disappointing for the studio. I think MGM expected a lot better business. They didn't really get that from this film, but it wound up becoming a hit on home video and in the rental circuit. So all of those things combined ultimately led to the film eventually making a profit. And it's a movie that is very much highly regarded to this day. And I think the film is a really interesting and unique breakthrough in children's animation because it's not a film that is strictly just for kids. It doesn't dumb a lot of the subtext down, and it also has a sharp edge to it. Like it's not quite Watership Down or the Plague Dogs, but it's still got a legitimate edge to it, which I thought was really surprising. And the people behind the film were also surprised by its eventual G rating. They were like, "Really? Like we have blood in this. There's a lot of adult themes. A G? We thought we were going to get a PG." And the MPA was like, "Nah, you get a G." And that I think could have hurt the film. I think a lot of people, especially the younger, not necessarily the younger, but the teen audience, the young adult audience, that maybe I think MGM was trying to cater to or trying to get to go see the movie, they avoided the film just because of the rating alone. And like, oh, it's just another, kids movie. This this cover art, this new updated cover art for this Blu-ray, well, it's not really new because this is an older Blu-ray, but this doesn't do it any favors either. This makes it look like a lighthearted romp. That's not what The Secret of Nim is at all. So, for whatever reason, it just didn't really become a big hit financially, which is unfortunate. I think it deserved better when it came out in the theater. But no matter the disappointing box office, being a factor or not, this film is a success because it's the result of Don Bluth and his team finding a way to beat all the odds, defect from a major studio, and one of the only options that any animator really had at the time to do animation for film, at least legitimate animation that to be taken seriously, which was Disney at the time, and to defect from Disney and to go on to create your own production company and do your own independent animated film is an impressive feat. And the fact that they got it done, and not only they got it done, they utilized what were state of the art techniques at the time that have never had been utilized in that capacity for animation, is incredible and so impressive. So this film was always going to be a success no matter if it broke even at the box office or if it was an absolute flop, because of the fact that it just got made in the first place. And speaking of Don Bluth, he directed this film, and this was his directorial debut. I thought he did a really good job, especially for a first time director when it comes to an animated film. His experience in the realm and in the field of animation really paid off here, because before he directed this film and did other animated films after this, he was a animator that was more well known in the industry as a guy who worked behind the scenes. He was more well known as a guy who did animation, who just did some animated work for Disney and worked with a whole team of animators. He wasn't really known as a guy who was doing the lead animation by a lot of critics or by a lot of audiences. He was just a cog in the machine, so to speak. And I feel that in a lot of ways, due to how the Black Cauldron just crashed and burned in the box office, and the Black Cauldron also was a film that just didn't ultimately get a fair uh, production or release. I think that ultimately led to Don Bluth and a lot of other animators who worked at Disney at the time defecting from Disney and deciding to work on this film instead. Another factor is that um this was a project that was optioned to Disney, but Disney just didn't want to do it because they, oh, another film about a mouse. We already have a mouse. It's called Mickey Mouse. We don't want to do this. But Don Bluth and a lot of other people who were working for the company at the time, they were really passionate about this project and they really wanted to get this film made. And when Disney was like, no, we're not interested, that also, I think, really caused them to heavily consider leaving the company. And I know I mentioned Black Cauldron and its eventual release. Like, I think it came out after this, but Black Cauldron was in development for many, 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 many years before it even eventually got made by Disney and released in theaters. And I think Don Bluth might have been involved in some of those early versions of the Black Cauldron. But yeah, Don Bluth's direction in this, it's dynamic, it's very strong, good setup of camera angles, perspectives, utilizing backgrounds in ways that really do make the animation pop. Don Bluth's best work in this really were scenes that were just magical and just really emphasizing the setting of the film and the overall world that Miss Brisby and all these other characters inhabit, and sequences that involved like action, like the bird flying, the sword fight between the two rats at the end, the sequence with the plow. That's really where the film really shines when it comes to the direction. is when it comes to these sequences that feature a lot of movement and a lot of energy. And Don Bluth, it just seemed like a natural when it comes to just providing those sequences with a lot of realistic and intense imagery and uh, focus and perspective when it comes to the visual flair of the animation. The script by Don Bluth, John Pomeroy, Gary Goldman, and Will Finn, based on the novel Miss Frisby and the Rats of Nim by Robert C. O'Brien. It's a good example of a screenplay that takes the source material, puts its own spin on it, and in a lot of ways makes it a little bit better. Because the original story, it's not bad by any means, but there's a lot of elements in it that are, let's just say, not quite as effective as what the writers of Secret of Nim created for their adaptation. For one, I think having the fantasy elements with the amulet and the great owl and a lot of this other stuff, I think it makes it stand out more instead of it just being another kind of animated film at the time that's got a little bit more of an edge in terms of the storytelling, but it's all just realistic stuff. Because that's really what the novel and the story was. It was a lot of very realistic stuff. There was no fantasy. There was none of that. There were smarter rats that were made intelligent because of experiments by humans, but there wasn't any magical amulets or Miss Brisby's home getting lifted up in the air by the power of magic. There was none of that. And I think having the fantasy elements mixed with the more serious stuff, it made this adaptation into something that was a little more unique. It made it stand out more in a good way for me. And The Secret of Nim, to me, it's at its best when it is being more dramatic, being a little heavy when it comes to its emotions. The final confrontation between Jenner and Justin, for instance, the scenes involving Miss Brisby being in danger, like the stuff where she goes and is going to try to knock out the cat, you know, the dragon, and she's taken it upon herself to, I guess, in a way, honor Jonathan, her husband, by going on the same mission that he did that ultimately cost him his life. So she decides to go on that mission and put the sleeping powder into Dragon's dish, and she winds up being captured, and then she finds a way to escape. That was a really tense scene that was very well put together by the writers. Now, what isn't as effective to me is the comic relief, the comedy, the lighter uh, moments in the script. There are some good things like Miss Brisby's love for her family and the lengths that she's willing to go to save her sick kid. And I like the dynamic that's created between her and this goofy bird, Jeremy. But with Jeremy in particular, I think the script did a good job making this character, this bird who is afraid of cats and likes shiny things and is really into string. Like, they made this bird into a character that was engaging and likable, but they never really gave Jeremy anything major to do when it comes to the finale. It felt like there was a buildup that was happening where Jeremy would be involved and he would do something to help Miss Brisby, either save her or save her family, and you never really get that. In fact, Jeremy spends a good chunk of the finale on the sideline, not even on the screen. The story has him going on a mission to get string, and it all happens off screen. And when he gets back, it's already too late. And it seems like he was only there for cheap comic relief and for this honestly not very uh, efficient or satisfying finale, or for his arc anyway, where he was talking about how he would like to meet another bird, a girl bird, and he just stumbles across a girl bird and they fall in love and they fly off with some string and that's it. And you're like, that really felt like it wasn't that well put together of an arc for the character of Jeremy. Miss Brisby has a clear arc where she starts out as the meek mother who really wants to do whatever she can to save her kid, but she lacks courage. And then throughout the story, she slowly builds more and more courage and in her own way becomes a hero. But Jeremy, no, they just treated him as typical comic relief and a inconsequential character when it comes to the story for the most part. Which, other than him like saving the medicine for Miss Brisby, when there was that first confrontation with Dragon. And another thing about the script that I think is not really that strong is the kids, they don't really have a lot of depth to them. They're just there, and there's the typical stuff with the kids where they're all just being like, "Oh, we're cute kids," and you know, you're supposed to like us just because we're kids. And just I didn't really feel that the writing staff really did a whole lot with these children characters to make them into anything other than your typical cliched type of children characters. Um, the film really didn't really maintain the same compelling narrative or the same consistency quality wise or entertainment when it focused on the kids, and in particular when it focused on the kids and Auntie Shrew. Like, the character of Auntie Shrew is awful. The character of Auntie Shrew, I don't even think even needed to be in the film. You could have cut her out and have the kids do some of the stuff that she did, or have Jeremy do some of these things, or Miss Brisby. Like, I know there's that whole scene where she saves Miss Brisby and unplugs the fuel line on the plow, but you didn't have to have the Shrew character do that. You could have Miss Brisby do it, Jeremy, you could have anyone else do that. It didn't have to be her. It felt like that she was just given that role to make it so she wasn't a complete one note character who seemingly just hates the kids and is just there to be annoying, or to be a pain. And I don't like characters like that for the most part. Characters that, other than giving them one little thing to do, they're pretty much useless, or they're just detrimental to the enjoyment of a story. And I really feel that Auntie Shrew is definitely one of those characters. She has a lot of scenes, and I'm like, I wanted to see more scenes with Jeremy. I wanted to see more scenes with Justin, or more scenes with Jenner, or Nicodemus, or Mr. Ages. Like, I'd rather see more stuff with those characters, or Miss Brisby's kids, than anything dealing with Auntie Shrew. And speaking of Jenner, I felt like even though I think there's some genuine moments where this is a compelling and strong and captivating nefarious villain, he doesn't have a lot of time in the story, and it seems like his motivations are not necessarily as cohesive and as strong as I think they could have been. And I think there was a missed opportunity to use the formula or the experimentation that was used to make the rats smart and to have more of a battle at the end where Jenner would get some of that serum and he would create his own intelligent rat army, and Nicodemus and Miss Brisby and Jeremy and all these other and Justin, and they would have to put together their own uh, uh, resistance to fend off Jenner. And I really would have liked to have seen that. Because the way it is, it just seems a little small. Like there's a fun little sword fight between Jenner and Justin, and Jenner has this confidant of his who's reluctant about joining him and reluctant about the plan to kill Nicodemus, but he goes along with it. I believe the character is Sullivan, and he has a moment where he redeems himself when he throws a knife in Jenner's back. But it's just one of those things where you have a really potentially strong and memorable villain here in Jenner, but he just doesn't seem like he's featured enough in the story. And like I said, the whole thing involving him creating his own army could have been really fun, could have been really interesting. And there's a setup for that, but you never really get that. And it was a story anyway, and an adaptation that was already taking a lot of creative liberties from from the original source material. So you could go one step further and go that route, and decided to just kind of be small and have the big wow moment just be the magic amulet in action, and Miss Brisby using it to save her family. And I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. But I do give the script a lot of credit for going places that you wouldn't necessarily expect a children's film to go, with the subtext and the stuff about experimentation and animal testing, and the fact that NIMH, it stands for something you might not necessarily expect initially, the National Institute for Mental Health. Like it's not some made up word for some kind of land where it's populated with all of these mice and other animals who are anthropomorphic and can talk. Like that's not the case at all. It actually has a clear explanation for it, and there are some scenes that showcase humans, and there's this whole plot involving the rats and the one surviving mouse that was exposed to whatever this formula was, who are at odds with one another. Nicodemus, he's developed a conscience, and he feels bad for taking the humans' power and their energy, and he wants his people to move on, move out of the bush, the rose bush, and go on to their own land and create their own power, and create their own sustainable society that doesn't need the farmers' energy. And Jenner and his men and his people, they're on the opposite side of that argument. They feel that, oh, we've already established a society. So what? we're taking power, whatever. We've already established this. We've built so much. Why should we have to throw that away? And I think that creates a lot of interesting dynamics and creates some genuine thought provoking elements of drama. But I think those things are not necessarily as fully fleshed out as I think they could have been when it comes to the script, in favor of stuff for the kids, Angie Shrew's shenanigans, and so on. And that's why, even though I really ultimately liked this film, from a storytelling perspective, from a screenplay viewpoint, I think the script is, I wouldn't say disappointing, but it's not something that fully lives up to the potential of the idea and the themes that are presented throughout the story. But I think it does a good enough job with establishing likable enough characters, building some arcs, especially for Miss Brisby, and having a sense of intrigue as well as some tension and some stakes. And there are some simple things here and there, like a lot of it is just really Miss Brisby trying to save her family, but it works. It really does. And what makes it stand out more from a lot of other films like it is that it's willing to be a little bit more thought provoking at times than your average bit of family animation. The voice cast is, for the most part, really strong. I think the voice cast is great. Elizabeth Hartman is Miss Brisby. The character and the voiceover at times can be a little quiet and understated, but there's a certain strength to it though. And I think that it's still a really great performance, and I think it really does fit the character of Miss Brisby very well. Yeah, she's kind of meek and a little bit soft spoken, but throughout the film, her voice and her performance, it becomes more outspoken. It becomes more strong. And I think Hartman did a great job showing that progression for that character when it comes to the way that she carried herself. Dom DeLuise, a lot of it is him just kind of improvising, just kind of mugging a little bit for the camera, but he's very charismatic and he's a lot of fun. And I really like Dom DeLuise and I like the character Jeremy, but he's not given that much to do when it comes to the story. So he's just there for, comic relief, and he does whatever he can with that. And it's a lot because Dom DeLuise is a very talented comic actor and he can really pull it off when it comes to doing the voiceover stuff. But I got to be honest, like I was a little bit let down by Dom DeLuise in this, not because of what he did, but because what he wasn't able to do when it comes to this film. Peter Strauss, I thought he was spectacular. He was really good as Justin. Really showcased this sense of nobility and really did a good job playing this even-keeled, heroic character. So much so to the point where I wanted more scenes with him that I didn't get, which is also also a little disappointing. Just in the same vein as Jeremy. Arthur Mallet as Mr. Ages gave me a lot of, the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland vibes, but it was effective. It was strong. It worked for what the character needed to be. Same thing goes for Derek Jacobi as Nicodemus, is very mysterious, wise type who definitely has this presence to him that's very larger than life. And in the same way, I would say John Carradine fits that mold as well as the Great Owl. Paul Shenar as Jenner, I think this is also one of Paul Shenar's best voiceover performances, one of his best performances in general as an actor. Um, Intimidating, sly, uh, and just a performance that you really enjoyed to see because you could tell that he was having a good time playing the bad guy, and you could tell that was passionate about it and cared. And it really does show when it comes to his voiceover work in this. This is a performance that he did twice because when he saw the final animation of the character in action, he felt like his original voiceover work wasn't really up to par and didn't really fit the character as well as he would personally like. So he was given an opportunity to do a redo, and he did it. That just shows you how passionate he was when it comes to this film and to this character of Jenner. So using the term disappointing, it is a little disappointing yet again that he wasn't able to be in the film more. Uh Hermione Baddeley as Auntie Shrew. I didn't care for this performance. I didn't care for this character. Very shrill, very over the top. A lot of the performances in this voice cast were very natural and felt very realistic for the most part, but then you have Andy Shrew just chewing up the scenery. Aldo Ray as Sullivan, another good, understated but strong performance. Shannon Doherty as Teresa, Wil Wheaton as Martin, Ina Freed as Timothy, Jodie Hicks as Cynthia. The kids, they are what they are. Eddie McClurg has a bit role as Miss Wright. She's okay, but it's not a role where there's a lot for her to really work with. But yeah, for the most part, I think it's a really, really good voice cast. I think the editing by Jeffrey Patch is really good. I think it fits the film very well. Really adds to a lot of the action sequences and the moments where there's some real sense of suspense and thrill to the sequence. The music by Jerry Goldsmith, I think, is some of Goldsmith's best work, and is even more impressive considering that he had never done anything for animation until this film. And the movie features some okay songs as well. I know there was one song that was cut out of the final cut of the film, but it's on like the soundtrack. I would say definitely the standout track is "Flying Dreams" by Paul Williams and Sally Stevens, which is played over the end credits, which features original composition work by Jerry Goldsmith. But yeah, it's not a soundtrack which I would say in terms of the songs that they're on par with like Aladdin or any of these other Disney movies at the time. But this wasn't really a musical anyway, although there was like a musical bit here and there. It really is just more of a traditional animated adventure than really a straight up musical. But what music you do get is quite good. So yeah, it's a film that I definitely would recommend, especially if you're a fan of animation or a fan of Don Bluth. I mean, if you're a fan of Don Bluth, you've probably already seen this numerous times. But if you're a fan of animation and you've been watching a lot of Disney movies and you want something a little different, I would definitely recommend checking this out sometime. I will say this about this Blu-ray. Like, it's nice that it's on Blu-ray and it's got an audio commentary and there's a little featurette on it. But this is not the best looking transfer, and it's not even in the right aspect ratio. So that's really disappointing and really a letdown. I honestly hope that there's a 4K or a new remastered Blu-ray in the works sometime with more features and a new remastered print, or yeah, a new remaster based on a print or a negative or something. Like, I really feel that this deserves better than what it's got on Blu-ray. A 4K, I think, is something that this absolutely deserves. I think this film could look absolutely stunning in 4K. considering how many scenes in this and how much animation in this, and it's just so impressive and so beautiful in terms of the way that it appears on the screen. The animators outdid themselves with this. They really did. And they put everything they had into it. I mean, the animation crew, they put mortgages on their houses. They put their houses on the line to finish this film and get it into theaters. And to me, that sacrifice was well worth it for this film. Even though I got some issues with it, story-wise, I still would say I really liked it. And it's a movie that definitely has aged pretty well. I think it stood the test of time. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on The Secret of Nimh. And thanks for watching this review. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.